Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Thanks for listening to the podcast today. We're chatting with Sam McArtor from Rentgrata. It's a great episode, and I'm thankful to Sam for taking the time, and also want to do a quick shout out to M25 for the introduction. After the episode, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, do that, and also leave us a review. Would love to hear your thoughts on the show. Thanks so much. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Sam McArtor, co-founder and COO at Rentgrata. Sam, welcome.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Well, let's start with a quick overview of Rentgrata and what you and the team are building.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So Rentgrata is the first renter insights platform that creates connections and builds community for multifamily properties. We do this by connecting prospective renters with current residents of apartment communities so that prospects can ask questions and get feedback from their peers. If a prospect chats with a resident on Rentgrata and then ends up signing a lease, both the prospect and the current resident earn a reward. It's kind of a more modern take on traditional resident referral reward programs that are offered by apartment communities.
Interesting. What's that user experience like if I'm a prospect? How do I actually get that connection?
That's a great question. So we built what we call Rentgrata Messenger. It's essentially a widget that lives on an apartment community's website. And through Rentgrata Messenger, a prospect is able to see a list of residents who have signed up to be ambassadors for their communities. And they can actually select a resident to have a conversation with. So a prospect can see the picture of the resident. They can see some information about that resident's floor plan, some likes and interests about the resident. And that way, a prospect can connect with the resident who not only lives in a floor plan that they're interested in renting, but they can also chat with someone who has similar likes and interests that they do. By providing this information to the prospect, they're able to get insights that they wouldn't have been able to get through more like traditional sources like reviews or through like even pictures that are provided on the property's website.
Nice. Is it all real time or is there a delay? Like it asynchronous? How does the communication actually work?
Yeah, so it's immediate in that the prospect will send a message to the resident. That message will be sent right away to that resident, and we'll touch more on what right away means in just a second. As soon as that resident responds, the prospect and the resident are essentially having a conversation via like text or through rentgrata.com or the Rentgrata iOS app. The delay really is just the amount of time that it would take for a resident to get back to that prospect or respond to that prospect's question. But typically, there's not really too much of a delay. The answers are relatively immediate. We do monitor all the conversations. It's essentially a content moderation tool just to make sure that we're protecting both the renters and our management company partners and that nothing inappropriate is being said. But other than that, it is relatively immediate. And that as soon as a message is sent, the recipient of the message has the opportunity to respond and reply directly from there.
Got it. Nice. Paint a picture for somebody who's listening of the current status of Rentgrata. Any vanity metrics you can share? Could be transactions, community supported, revenue, funding, size of the team. For someone who's listening, what does that look like?
I'll start with funding. We just closed $1 million round led by M25 in
Congrats.
October, I believe. Thank you. We're very excited about that. That gave us the ability to hire a couple of more key people. We hired, since then, we've hired 2 more people on the business development side. We've hired a customer success manager, and we've grown our development team by 1. So that's been great. It's given us the ability to kind of expand in the market as well. We've seen a lot of growth over the last 12 months, and we've really started to explode in student, at least in 2020, which has been really exciting. One of the key metrics that I like to provide is kind of just a quick tidbit of information about the conversion rates that we're seeing on Rentgrata. On average, across the board nationwide, we're seeing about a 42% conversation to lease conversion rate. So 42% of the time a prospect has a conversation with a resident on Rentgrata, they will ultimately end up signing a lease and moving into that particular community.
How does that compare against a typical leasing statistic?
So it varies, but on average, Rentgrata is converting at about 10 times more traditional marketing avenues.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. We it does vary, but we typically see anywhere from 4 to 12% of leads converting to leases through like Zillow or more traditional ILS type lead generation platforms.
And I know you're multifamily. You said in there student, which I'm assuming means student housing. What are some of the other verticals you guys think of from a go-to-market perspective?
So right now we focus mainly on conventional and multifamily and student communities, student multifamily. You're absolutely right in that student is more students like focused communities, and they typically revolve around like college communities. We've talked internally about expanding into senior housing and even beyond that, entirely separate verticals such as like gyms or vacation packages or car buying, all sorts of different things. Pretty much anything that would require a major purchase or some type of subscription that people want to get more information about prior to actually making the decision to purchase. But that being said, we've kind of decided internally that we're going to stay focused on multifamily right now, at least for this foreseeable future. We have a lot more wood to chop there, but our technology and what we've kind of built would be useful in other industries. So we'll see how we develop and expand over the next year or so, but multifamily is kind of our lane, and that's what we've decided to stay in, at least for right now.
Got it. When you think of competition in this space, who or what comes to mind?
So we don't really have any direct competition today. I will say that our competitors are the most valuable thing. I guess let me back up a little bit. One of the most valuable things and one of the ways that we have competitors is purely just based on the real estate that our platform takes up on a property's website. There are a lot of different technologies and a lot of different great technologies that operate as widgets on a property's website, whether they live in the bottom left or bottom right-hand side of the screen. And that's the same space that we need to help prospects see that they can reach out and talk to residents on a property's website. So like the Knock, BetterBot, Perk, those are 3 good examples. All of those platforms offer a widget that lives in the bottom left or bottom right-hand side of the screen. And Rentgrata and Rentgrata Messenger, we also need that real estate space on the property's website. So that's one of the ways that we have competitors. But I'm happy to say that we don't have any direct competitors that are offering a platform similar to Rentgrata right now.
Nice. Why do you think you don't have direct competitors? I'd be interested in your thoughts. Just you guys were first to market. Were there people doing this before and they didn't make it, and you think you guys will? What? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a little backstory also, but when we thought of this idea of connecting prospective renters with current residents so that they could better take advantage of these referral programs, we thought to ourselves that there had to be something like this out there. we did a lot of research and we were really surprised to learn that there really wasn't, at least at the time. We were kind of surprised and we thought, wow, this is something that we could absolutely develop. And we think that we did some research on whether or not it would provide value. And we kind of determined that because referrals have such a high conversion rate, there has to be an opportunity here. I think that because we were first to market in the space, I think the reason why we were first to market in the space is because this is such a revolutionary platform, and the idea of connecting prospective renters with current residents is something that I think some people, especially in multifamily, had a lot of hesitations about. One of the reasons why is because typically when someone leaves a review, it's either really positive or really, really negative. Don't generally speak about their experience on a regular day-to-day basis about what it's like to live in their apartment community. So people in multifamily, until Rentgrata was released and until they had an opportunity to experience it, I think they had some concerns about what their residents would say. And really, I think that's part of the reason why Rentgrata never, or a platform like Rentgrata, I should say, never really took off, is just because it was a totally new idea, totally original, and there wasn't really anything else out there like it that had hit the market yet at that point.
How common is bad feedback shared on the platform? I guess where this is coming from is, to me, it feels like it's almost a tell, just in the fact that if you landed on a property's website and they had Rentgrata, they're almost right there just advertising like, look, take the Pepsi challenge, right? Like we're that confident. How often do they get bitten by that?
So that's probably the most common question that we get. So it's definitely something. It's definitely something that comes up, and I'm happy to say we've had literally tens of thousands of conversations on Rentgrata, and we haven't had to remove a single resident for just bashing their community. All of these residents are happy residents that are stoked about the opportunity to provide feedback about their experience to prospective new renters. And they typically, something to keep in mind is they're all financially incentivized to speak well about their experience. So we really haven't come across that as being an issue, at least to date. But I will say our sample size is now it's pretty large, and we really haven't seen that to be an issue, which is something we're really proud of. I think some of that comes from kind of how we onboard our residents. We give them the feeling that this is a community building platform, and it's a way for them to not only get to earn rewards, but it's a way for them to meet their new neighbors who could be moving in across the hall. So there is some transparency there. The residents do say sometimes, I really love XYZ about my community. My favorite thing is this, but I wish the elevators were a little faster. And I think that honesty and that transparency that residents have with prospects is part of the reason why our conversion rates are so high. Both of these parties trust each other a lot, and they value what the other party has to say.
Have you had a situation yet where a resident has brought you into a new property, where like I move out of a property where I was using Rentgrata and help build that community? I move into a new property that's not using Rentgrata, and so I go to the landlord and pitch to them to bring this tool in?
We've had a couple of residents who have moved and have talked to their on-site teams at their new property about utilizing Rentgrata, and that on-site team had reached out to us, or the resident had reached out to us to set up a call to speak with their on-site team. But we haven't moved beyond that just yet. I think as we get more market penetration and we expand into different new markets and get more residents to sign up, that will become more common. I think that after a resident has signed up for Rentgrata and they've had the experience of having it at a property before, it becomes somewhat of an amenity. And we hope that the amenity of Rentgrata is something that residents do expect that their communities will have down the road.
Do you and the team feel like you have product market fit?
Yeah, absolutely. We had one major pivot since we developed the idea of Rentgrata, And just for a little bit of background, we first created what was essentially an internet listing service. So we would create a listing for a property. A prospect could visit rentgrata.com and find that property on a map. They could see from there who had signed up as an ambassador at that particular community, and they could start a conversation. We still operate that internet listing service portion of Rentgrata, but we've kind of shifted our focus and we've pivoted to the Rentgrata Messenger feature, which is what lives on a property's website. Since we released that Messenger feature, things have really kind of taken off for us, and that's how we've really been able to provide value by focusing on making the connection between prospective renters and current residents, and utilizing the property's current traffic to convert more of their leads to leases.
Nice. So I'm imagining it's a traditional B2B sale. You have a team that's reaching out to prospects and working with them to get them engaged with Rentgrata, or do you have a strong set of marketing efforts as well?
We focus mainly on B2B. A lot of our marketing efforts are just through word of mouth, going to conferences. Our sales team is pretty active in developing relationships within multifamily, getting in front of decision makers whenever possible. We don't really focus on marketing and through other avenues. We have a PR team that we utilize just to kind of provide updates on what we do and to schedule like interviews with multifamily publications. But that's really it. And we've actually seen a lot of growth just through word of mouth over the last 12 months, which it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at the Rentgrata team, do you guys have either swag for employees, or do you do anything for customers?
Yes, absolutely. We order swag, and we love to give out swag to renters, management company partners, and our employees.
Right on. What's your favorite thing to give to renters?
We provided pop sockets, those little.
Yeah.
They go on the back of your phone. They pop out. Our renters really loved those. They got a kick out of that, and it was last year. They were kind of trendy at the time, but that was fun. People really enjoyed those.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening to this and you need to get your startup swag, you can go to fuelmerchandise.com, mention startup competitors, and get a 10% discount off your first order. What's the biggest challenge you and the team have faced to date?
Oh, that's a tough one, Michael.
You can give me a handful of challenges. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like being an entrepreneur, there's challenges we face on a regular basis, but that's kind of part of the fun. The challenges come with the journey. I think the biggest challenge for us probably was convincing people in multifamily, especially decision makers of large management companies, that current residents should be utilized as a tool to provide feedback and to help make the leasing process more efficient for the on-site teams. It took us a long time to really kind of prove out our model to some of the larger names in the industry. And I think they just had hesitation around the whole idea of connecting prospects with residents. But now that we've kind of proven and we have enough data to back this up, that this platform has a very high conversion rate, things have been much, much easier for us. I also think that the multifamily industry is one that people like to see what their competitors are doing, of course, and it gives that reason has given us an opportunity to expand and grow within multifamily. Because as one competitor launches Rentgrata, the building across the street sees it and they say, "Oh, this is actually pretty neat. I'm ready to roll this out at my community now."
So we have a commercial real estate startup in our portfolio. And one of the things I've noticed there that can be interesting, and I'd be interested in your experiences on this, is that if we go to a management company that, let's say they own 100 buildings, we would typically get the pilot with, 5 or 10 buildings, see how it goes there. And then of course, if we're successful, we can convert ideally the entire portfolio if it's a good fit from a match perspective. Is that also your experience when you go to market?
Yes and no. So in the beginning or early on at Rentgrata, when we would launch pilots with larger management companies, we would usually get like one or two properties. And it was tough to prove the value that we could provide on a larger scale with that small of a pilot. That being said, more recently, we typically try to roll out our pilots with anywhere from 5 to 10 to 20 properties. And that has given us the ability to kind of show how our platform can provide value in different asset classes in different markets. And once we kind of figured out that need to get larger pilots, just to show how we essentially can scale within a management company, that has given us a quicker path to larger expansion within that same management company. So it is a very similar route that we take. We shoot for a pilot of anywhere from 5 to 10 properties, and then we try to show our value, the return on the investment that management company can get with Rentgrata, and we expand within their portfolio.
Got it. How successful is that kind of land and expand strategy been? And I would say for us, it feels a little 50-50. It feels to me like when they bring us in our company, they've kind of already made up their mind probably before they run the pilot. The pilot's more of like a deal killer, if nothing else. Like they've made the decision. We want to use this in all of our properties. Let's run the pilot to confirm they can do what they say they're going to do. Versus, I would say we probably have a couple of clients where, like, no, we really only want this for these couple of properties, and we've been unsuccessful in scaling past that into those other properties. And I'd just be interested if you guys have experienced something similar.
We've definitely seen both of those scenarios over the years, for sure. There's no doubt about that. I will say that one of the challenges that we've kind of faced is that sometimes with a new management company or a new relationship, that management company has kind of already decided, okay, we're going to try Rentgrata in 2 properties or 3 properties that we're really struggling with, that we need a lot of help with. Happens. Sometimes I feel like we're put into a position where the on-site team already has a lot of things that they're dealing with on a daily basis, and it's really tough for us to get set up to put our best foot forward just right off the bat. That being said, after the onboarding process with a new community is complete and the residents have signed up, Rentgrata kind of operates on its own. It's a relatively straightforward experience for the on-site team, and it takes minimal amounts of time and effort from the on-site team once it's up and running. So there have been scenarios where we get put into these properties that the management company wasn't even necessarily expecting things to go well, and things have gone surprisingly well. We'll generate a couple leases a month within the first 30 to 90 days during the pilot period. And that value add there and that return that they're seeing on their investment in Rentgrata has given us the opportunity to further expand within their portfolio, which is great. Of course, that's not always what happens. There have been scenarios or there have been times where we get put into a management company for a pilot. Things don't necessarily go well. We don't perform at the metrics or the KPIs that we'd like to typically see. And at least temporarily, that would be the end of the pilot that we had with that management company. So we've seen both. I will say we've actually had a couple of stories where we've had a pilot with a management company maybe a year ago. Our platform has kind of changed. We've provided updates to our technology, and things have just gotten better at Rentgrata as time has gone on. And that same management company had reached back out and said, like, hey, we've seen a lot of people doing this recently. We'd like to give this a try again. And at that point, that's when we have the discussion of getting a larger pilot to kind of show our value on a larger scale to that management company.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I thought that story was going to end the other way, where it was, they pilot us at 3 properties that are struggling. And in my mind, of course, there's a reason why properties are probably struggling, right? Which could mean that they're a bad fit for referrals. just because if that property is struggling to lease, there, like it could be because there's a problem at that property. So that's all. And the fact that you guys get good stories out of that at all seems pretty amazing to me. So that's great.
Yeah, it's really interesting because properties of all different like asset classes, they're like a B plus property doesn't have the same amenities that an A plus property has. But residents at that community do see things on a regular basis that they think are really positive that someone from the outside might not necessarily notice. A resident of a community might really just love the like sense of community at that property. They might have a really strong relationship with some of their neighbors. They might be able to walk down the hall and knock on the door and ask for a cup of flour. And that might be something that they didn't have at another community that they really like about where they live. The personal things that people experience on a regular basis living in their communities are really valuable, and that can be all that a prospect needs to convince them to decide to sign a lease or take the plunge, if you will.
Let's talk about kind of coming technology trends and maybe some do's and don'ts, because I can imagine one of the things that, as I think about the solution you've built, there's certainly got to be an allure towards automation of some responses, which of course would potentially destroy the authenticity, right? Like if you had a resident give an answer, basically the same answer to the same question 5 times, there's certainly got to be an instinct there. Well, we could provide that answer faster if we just automated it. Talk to me a little bit about, particularly in the age of chatbots, like that, like struggling against that desire to maybe make things a little bit more immediate, but keep the authenticity.
Yeah, that's really interesting. AI is definitely the future for a lot of different things in multifamily. Improving efficiencies, making sure that prospects can schedule tours and immediately and get feedback for some of their questions immediately, such as like rent price, the availability at a certain building. Those are all things that can be accomplished using AI. But Rentgrata provides a little bit of a different experience. Prospects, I should say, are asking questions that really can't be automated, at least not today with the technology that's available. They're really trying to learn about someone's firsthand experience in a community. Prospects often have very specific questions about a resident's experience. They might want to find out, how the resident events are. Does the gym get really crowded? How's trash pickup? The list goes on. And those are things that, at least today, AI can't really provide. That being said, we want Rentgrata. There's kind of our relationship to AI is kind of twofold. We want our platform to be as efficient as possible for on-site team members. So we do focus on building out integrations with large property management software providers, just so that the on-site teams in the properties that we're working with they can be relatively hands-off with Rentgrata. And then also on the other side of the coin, Rentgrata does something pretty unique that we haven't really touched on yet. We take these conversations that are happening between prospects and current residents, and we analyze the sentiment of the conversations taking place in real time. We do this so that we can provide our management company partners and our ownership groups with feedback about what renters really want. Our conversations are so unique that things are brought up that aren't typically mentioned in reviews or on surveys, because these conversations are happening throughout the day, all the time. And we essentially analyze these conversations and package them in a way that our management company partners can learn to improve the experience for renters at a particular community.
That's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really cool. Okay, we're just about at time. If folks want to learn more about Rentgrata, or if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to reach me would be sending me an email. It's sam@rentgrata.com. Always happy to receive emails. I'd love to chat with any of the listeners if they have any questions or if there's any level of interest there at all.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.